Good morning. China and the other BRICS countries are setting up a new financial system, and a lot of the trade, even between each other, is being done in United States dollars. To do that, China in particular has moved hundreds of billions of dollars out of Western financial systems and banks and brought them to banks here. Doing that is complicated and messy, especially when China earns billions of additional dollars each month in their trading accounts. There are three accounts in international trade and finance and macroeconomics: the current account, the capital account, and the financial account. The total of all three, the current account plus the capital account plus the financial account, they must always sum to zero. The current account reflects a country's trading with the rest of the world, imports and exports. The capital account includes countries borrowing and lending, and outbound and inbound investment. Now, those two accounts tend to balance each other out pretty smoothly most of the time. So if a country runs large trade surpluses with the United States, like China does, typically they take their trading profits and they buy assets in the United States or lend money, for example, by buying U.S. Treasury bonds. This chart here is a really good illustration of how the current account, the trade, and the capital account, investment and borrowings, tend to almost perfectly mirror each other. This is a 40-year run or so of U.S. balance of payments. On the bottom is the current account. They're below zero, so we're running trade deficits there. It is matched by foreign investment surplus, or the capital account, on the top. In 2021, the United States ran a trade surplus of about $800 billion, and the United States attracted foreign investment of about $800 billion. It's easier to understand this if we consider our own spending, your own household spending. If you earn $100,000 this year and spend $120,000, where did the extra $20,000 come from? You either liquidated an asset, taking $20,000 out of a savings account, for example, or you sold a stock or a car, or you borrowed $20,000. You put it on the credit card. If you flip those around, if you earn $120,000 and spend just $100,000, it means you have a surplus $20,000. And you can buy stocks or another investment, or you can put the money in the bank, effectively lending that money at interest. This is the same but for the whole economy and for every country. Now, this chart runs through the end of 2021 because in 2022, everything started to go off the rails. Remember, there are actually three accounts: the current account, capital account, and financial account, and they have to add up to zero. The financial account involves central bank activity, balancing exchange rates, providing liquidity to finance global trade, for example, and it usually doesn't add up to much. But lately it's adding up to a lot, and China's the reason why. China runs massive trade surpluses with the United States, about $1 billion a day. Macroeconomic theory and history says that most of that would be invested back into the United States. China would open a factory, for example, or they would put it into American banks, lending it at interest, or they would buy treasury bonds. But the opposite is happening. Instead of buying U.S. Treasury bonds, China is a seller of those bonds. So not only is China earning USD in their current account, and the United States losing USD in our current account, China is also liquidating U.S. government bonds, or at least they're letting many of them mature and taking the dollars at maturity and not rolling them over. China is also not reinvesting their current account dollars back into financial assets. China put in less than $5 billion in 2022, down from $46 billion in 2016. What's more, Chinese companies in the United States are laying off and selling off assets there. FDI was already in steep decline, and going from 2021 to 2022, it fell by more than half. Looking at 21-22 on these two charts, completed Chinese foreign direct investment and first-year FDI expenses, across all countries, China is behind Spain and Norway. even Qatar. And remember, of all these countries, it's China that has the largest trading surpluses with the United States. They have to put all those dollars to work somewhere, and it's not going into U.S. bonds, and China's not putting it to work in foreign direct investment in the United States. And here's where things get really funky. China's global investment is rising dramatically. It rose sharply in the first 6 months of 2023, just not to the United States. Here's a chart of the 5-year current account between the U.S. and China. The trade deficit for the United States with China hit a 2-year high in July, $27 billion for the month, nearly $1 billion a day. That red line going across the top means that since September of 2022, the United States sends $20 to $25 billion in USD to China, who is again not using that money to buy bonds, but they're selling them, and they're not investing in FDI in the United States, but they're doing so in lots of other places. Those dollars have to go somewhere, and China is moving them out of the United States and banks there, and lending those same USD instead to their trading partners around the world. It's a double whammy for the United States. These dollars are actually loans to United States taxpayers. We have to pay back with interest. But those same dollars are also being used in a new financial system, generating billions of dollars in economic activity that are benefiting China and the other BRICS countries. Chinese regulators and central bankers do have a problem, though, in that it's not easy to move all that money around without U.S. officials wondering where it went. Here's Bloomberg and an analysis by Brad Setzer, who's a former official at Treasury. He's looking at 2 sets of data from China. One is from their Customs Administration. That's the current account, calculating imports and exports. The other is from SAFE, the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. That's their financial account. And the numbers are not even close. And they started to blow wide open in 2022. China's trading surplus shown in the balance of payments data is far below what the customs numbers are. In Q2, the difference between the two is about $87 billion. It's running $150 billion for the first 6 months. And the cumulative external surplus is about $700 billion or so. China's SAFE explains that they have adjusted the numbers and reported them differently. There's a lot of trade outbound, free trade zones in China. And there is also an adjustment for Chinese factories operating abroad, like in Mexico and Vietnam. But those would also necessitate recording capital flows elsewhere. And those aren't showing up either, according to Setzer. And so he's saying that China needs to provide more information about investment income on foreign direct investments, bonds, and bank loans. Back to the chart again. SAFE's balance of payments historically runs a little bit higher than China's customs because China does maintain a tight trading band of their currency, the renminbi, against the US dollar. And that keeps them busy. But now it's flipped the other way. And what Setzer is saying here is that China has $700 billion more than China is admitting that they have. We know that China's got the $700 billion because the dollars left the United States and never came back. And it's growing. Every day, China runs another $1 billion trading surplus or has another tranche of U.S. Treasury bonds mature and they collect the face value of those bonds. It's $700 billion now and rising. This trend keeps up, and by Halloween next year, the pile will be $1 trillion, $1,100 billion. The economic sanctions on Russia in 2022, and especially seizing Russian reserves held in Western banks, convulsed the financial systems in a lot of ways, including this one. The BRICS countries love dollars, and we love giving them our dollars. What they hate now is our banks and the risks of keeping their dollars in our banks. So when you hear about doing away with the dollar in international trade, just ignore it. That's not happening. The BRICS countries love our dollars. The Chinese love our dollars. China loves our dollars so much they bring them here so they can hold them in their own Chinese banks. They love dollars so much they're selling U.S. bonds selling their companies in the United States and laying off workers there just so they can bring those dollars back to China too. China loves our dollars so much they have a mountain of our dollars, $700 billion high and growing. And they threw a blanket over it and they hope that we forget that it's there. This is Yangzhou in Jiangsu province. Be good.
If your children, if your church are empowered to go and make disciples of this nation and all nations. Thank you for sending your Son, Jesus, to die for us and to live for us.